and welcome to another episode of Veterans Health Today. Here you can learn about the services, programs, and benefits offered at the Dayton VA Medical Center. I'm your host, Public Affairs Officer Rhonda Moore. Dayton is home to not only one of the first VA campuses, but it's also a state-of-the-art medical facility, offering top quality care to those veterans in need. Our heritage dates to President Abraham Lincoln, who signed legislation creating our campus and now what's the modern VA. Our mission comes from his words, to care for him who shall have borne the battle. We continue that tradition today through the employment of modern medical services, many of which are geared to the special needs of our veterans. Today we're talking about ALS, also commonly called Lou Gehrig's disease. And joining me is Julia Prince, social worker and ALS coordinator at the Dayton VA, and Whitney Taverna, the Dayton Area Care Services coordinator with the ALS Association of Central and Southern Ohio. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Whitney, first tell me, what is ALS?
So ALS is commonly referred to as Lou Gehrig's disease. It is called amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. What happens with ALS is it affects the nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, and that causes eventual paralysis of the muscles. So individuals that live with ALS that are diagnosed, they have muscle weakness in all parts of their body. Sometimes it can start in their limbs, so their legs. They may start with foot drop. They may start tripping over things. Could start in their hands or their arms where they can't grasp. They can't move their arms, and it can also start in their speech and their swallowing. So they may have trouble during mealtime. They may not be able to swallow foods. And then we do have a small percentage where it does affect the respiratory system initially. But in general, you're going to see either bulbar, speech and swallowing onset, or limb onset.
And who does ALS affect?
Well, ALS does not discriminate. It affects anyone. There's a lot of research being done to try to figure out why someone is diagnosed with ALS. But in general, most of the individuals that are diagnosed are men, so twice as likely men are diagnosed than women.
Do you know why that is?
You know, they don't know. A lot of the causal effects, looking at some of the ALS research, kind of points to environmental factors. That can be for anyone diagnosed. It could be exposure to chemicals. It could be smoking, those kind of things. So it just depends on the person. It really varies from individual to individual as far as symptoms that start and why they start.
Is there a certain age group?
There is in general, again, we kind of see some outliers, but in general, individuals between the ages of 40 and 70, with kind of the median age being about 55. The incidence as you get older, as far as males and females, it tends to level out. We definitely see more individuals as they get older. It can be both men and women equally.
How many people in the general population have ALS or come down with ALS?
So in the general population, there's about 15,000 cases at any given time. Typically, we see individuals diagnosed sometimes later in the process. So they may start with symptoms and not be diagnosed until they're maybe halfway through the disease. We definitely have seen that with a lot of our individuals here in the Miami Valley. But one of the statistics that we always bring up in conversation is that every 90 seconds someone is diagnosed and every 90 seconds someone passes from ALS.
How does that compare to veterans?
So for veterans, veterans are twice as likely to be diagnosed with ALS than someone who has not served in the military. As in fiscal year 2020, there are about 4,500 cases of ALS within the veteran population. The reasons for that aren't known, but based on that research, the VA has decided that ALS would be a presumptive diagnosis. So there is research still being done, but unfortunately we're just not sure why that is.
As far as veterans, are we seeing male veterans, female veterans with ALS?
So in my clinic, all of our veterans are male, yes. Yeah, we don't, in my clinic, we don't have any female veterans with ALS.
Mm-hmm. So how many veterans would you say in the area have ALS, dealing with it?
So in Ohio, there are about 450 to 500 people that have been diagnosed with ALS, and about 15% of those people are veterans. So
what happens when a veteran is diagnosed with ALS? How do you find out?
So it kind of varies. We have individuals that reach out to us, maybe have seen our information on our website, so they reach out for support. We have veterans that either get in touch with Julia or get in touch with our chapter, and they may not even know that there is a service connection for ALS. So there's a lot of education on our part to kind of share, this is what the Dayton VA can offer, this is what the ALS Association can offer.
So you find out someone has ALS. Mm-hmm. And then do you automatically ask them, are they a veteran? And then you call Julia,
Yes.
or how does that work?
Yes. Yeah, that is actually on our intake form. So we always encourage people when they call us to get registered with our chapter. And then one of my first questions is going to be, have you served in the military? And so there are some criteria as far as, getting that service connection with the VA and getting those benefits. So once we kind of talk about that with the client, then I always introduce Julia and the spinal injury clinic, make sure that they're aware that that's available locally. We also refer to the Paralyzed Veterans of America, and they're the ones that will actually help get the paperwork started, hopefully to get benefits in place, and then they kind of move over to work with Julia in the clinic.
So then what happens on your part once you find out?
yes, so once I get the call from Whitney, I will first check to see if they're already registered with VA healthcare system, and at that point, then I'll give them a call and kind of introduce myself and the services that the VA can offer, and kind of piggybacking off of what Whitney said, talking to them again more about the service connection benefit, and making sure they, all their questions are addressed as far as that goes. Once we get them enrolled into VA healthcare, if they're not already enrolled, we go ahead and get that initial appointment set up and start connecting them with all the different services and equipment and things like that that they're going to need.
So what's the advantage for a veteran connecting with the VA if they have ALS?
I think, the biggest advantage is, having access to all of those services and equipment that can be difficult to access otherwise. And then, also having access to, again, that specialized, ALS-specific care. It's interesting, at least the past few veterans that I've met with have actually not been enrolled in VA services for one reason or another. So absolutely. When I give them a call after I've checked to see if they're enrolled or not, if they're not enrolled, I'll help them with that enrollment process and get them in as soon as possible. We don't have to wait for the service connection to get them involved with our clinic.
What if they already have a neurology team? Can they keep that team when they come to the VA, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely are happy to work hand in hand with their existing neurology clinic. We want to be respectful of that relationship because oftentimes the diagnosis process is a very lengthy one and can be very trying, and so we want to be respectful of that relationship, and any recommendations, equipment that team recommends for the veteran, we'll definitely take that information and get them connected with the VA to get that to them as quickly as possible.
And what would you suggest as a next step for a veteran once they find out they have ALS?
First thing, if I'm getting, the call, first thing I would recommend is connecting with the ALS Association. The amount of resources and just the services they offer are just invaluable to not only the veteran, but the family as well. After that, like we talked about previously, connecting with your veteran service organization, whether that be the Paralyzed Veterans of America or your county veteran service office, to get that service connection claim going, because getting that claim in place gives people access to so many different grants and services that may not be available to veterans otherwise. And then also too, give me a call if we haven't connected already, so that we can get you into the clinic and try to help support you through the process.
I was just going to add, just hearing from the veterans that the VA serves here locally, our ALS veterans, they are just amazed by the support that's provided through the clinic. One of the things, there's lots of research out there for any ALS clinic that it does tend to kind of increase quality of life. It may extend survival a little bit because you're getting good care. So really being connected to specialists like the physician, the respiratory therapist, the physical therapist, speech and occupational therapy, social work, nursing, is a tremendous kind of a burden is lifted off of that patient and their caregiver. The VA is getting equipment way ahead of time because we know this is a progressive disease. Mm-hmm. We know that people are going to eventually be paralyzed. So they need their power chair, they need home modifications, they need to be able to be out and about, getting an accessible vehicle. Mm-hmm. And those are all the things that the VA can provide.
And the ALS Association provide a lot of that as well, correct?
We do. We help with different things. So we know our veterans are going to be well taken care of, but we also can provide one-on-one support. So Julia and I kind of work hand in hand with our veterans as far as, making sure that the emotional needs are met, that the family's coping okay. We have support groups. Julia and I work together here locally for our Dayton support group. And that's just a peer group where people can come and learn from our speakers and our education, and then they can kind of share stories with each other. So a lot of tremendous support. It's a free service. We're a nonprofit. We've been around since 1984, and our goal is to improve quality of life for individuals facing this devastating illness.
And so if someone wants to join that support group, how do they do that?
Well, the first thing is to call our chapter, call me here locally, and we can get you registered. And then you'll just have kind of a 30-minute, 45-minute conversation with me. We just get a little background information. Your information is not shared, but the goal is to get you those free programs and services. And then anyone can come to our support groups.
We're talking about support services, but what about treatment?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have access to all the latest medications. Equipment is huge. Speech devices, voice banking, eye gaze devices, power wheelchairs. The VA also offers grants for automobile adaptation, home modifications, mental health support. The list goes on. So we do try to do a really good job at, again, anticipating those needs, because ALS is a progressive disease, and making sure all those services and needs are met kind of early on, so that it makes it easier as people transition.
In September, the ALS Walk took place, this annual event, and we've been showing video of some of that throughout our interview here now. So talk about that a little bit, and just how wonderful it was, really. A lot of support out there that day.
Absolutely. The ALS Association, our Central and Southern Ohio chapter, puts on a walk every September, and it's actually in all three of our major cities, so Dayton, Cincinnati, and Columbus. Our Dayton Walk is in Greene County at one of the Fairborn Parks, and it's usually on a Sunday. It's a big event to not only raise awareness about ALS and increase funding for our programs and services, but also to honor those that are living with ALS today and their families, and then memorialize those that we've lost to the ALS battle. So it's our biggest fundraiser. We encourage families to come out. It's just a fun day to kind of get together with your peers and support each other.
And Julia, the VA was out there this year.
Yes, absolutely. It was such an honor to be a part of the event. It was my first time attending, and honestly, it was an experience that I'll never forget. Just seeing all the different supporters within the community coming together and just really rallying around all of these wonderful people that have this terrible diagnosis, and their family and their friends, and so it's definitely something that I look forward to participating in the future.
And a couple of veterans from the Dayton VA were there as well.
Yes, I was very happy to see a couple of my veterans there as well, so hopefully we'll get a few more next year, and always happy to support you guys. So.
And what happens to the money that was raised? How much did you guys raise, if you know, and where does that money go?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing pretty well this year, given that we're coming off of COVID and we had virtual walks the last couple of years. So for our Dayton area, I think we're up to maybe around $65,000. All of that money does stay local to help our programs and services, and it makes up about 75% of our revenue. So any monies raised, are part of that. We do have a small percentage that'll go to our national office for research, ALS-specific research. So I think most of our families appreciate that because we do want to find a cure for this awful disease.
Well, we're praying for that cure, right?
Yeah, we are.
All right. Well, Julia and Whitney, thank you so much for being here and talking to us about what is really a tough subject and very devastating disease. Thank you so much for that. And coming up next, we are going to talk to a veteran who gets his health care at the Dayton VA. And he's going to tell us what it's like living with ALS. Back in a few after an important public service announcement.
America's veterans have sacrificed so much to protect our freedoms. And we need to show our gratitude. But how? Well, we can volunteer at a VA medical center or outpatient clinic, at a VA community living center, a Veterans Benefits Office, or at one of our national cemeteries. We can also contribute online to help support veterans programs. Let's show our nation's heroes just how much we care. Volunteer or donate today to thank America's veterans.
Welcome back. We've been talking about ALS, often referred to as Lou Gehrig's disease. Joining me now is Jim Mormon, or James Mormon, and his wife, Deborah. Mr. Mormon, tell me about when you first found out about ALS, that you had ALS. What was your reaction?
I was diagnosed in November of 2020, and the reaction was like getting hit with a truck. It was hard to comprehend. It was not what I wanted to hear, and it took me 3 days to be able to tell my wife about this diagnosis. I told her on Veterans Day, out on the front porch while we were enjoying the fall afternoon.
I know that had to be hard. Had you ever heard of ALS before?
I had, but it's something that other people had. There was no family history on my side or my father's side or my mother's side of the family. So it was a real surprise that I was diagnosed with ALS.
Deborah, what was your reaction? I can only imagine.
I think my first reaction was I was really like, you have ALS? And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I think we both are very strong people that we've been through other hard things, and I knew that as a couple that we could work through this together. We refer to it as a journey in our life, and we have a lot of support if it's from our family, our neighbors. The VA has been extremely helpful with dealing with different aspects.
In what way?
They had asked if either one of us needed any special counseling, help in getting things prepared for changes in our living situation with our house, making sure that we were directed to the right place to get a van, a handicap van, with his wheelchair and different things that he needs, and different training classes that come up. They've been very, very helpful with support in that way.
And how long did it take you to get the things that you needed?
The VA, once the diagnosis was confirmed, they put things into action very quickly. It was like, you're going to need this, this, and this, and here it is. And they were always proactive as opposed to being reactive. It was a bit overwhelming, but I see the purpose as to why they do what they do.
And had you already been enrolled at the Dayton VA?
I had been, yes.
I think their main thing was that they told us that you want to make sure that you stay ahead of the game, that you have things ready and you're prepared before you actually need something. And it's great that they do that, because when you go into this, I don't think you really know how fast or how slow the progression is going to be.
What do you want people to know about ALS?
It still surprises me that so many people that we talk with have no idea what ALS is. And they recognize it more by Lou Gehrig's disease. And it's like everything else. I don't believe ALS gets the scope of attention, thank you, as do other more common diseases. Since the relative number is low, it's just not as noticed as some of the others. And I think that holds back the research and the understanding of the community.
It's so devastating.
When I was diagnosed, the information was average person with ALS lives 3 to 5 years. But there's so many different progressions. It just depends on the individual. It's frustrating that you can't put a handle on things and say, well, this medicine will help, or this treatment or series of treatments. It's a hunt and peck at best, and you get to feel like a pincushion and a lab critter before it's done.
And Deborah, what has his progression been like since 2020?
His voice has really slowed down, and he has to think, especially on a long word, for that word to come out in syllables. He's lost strength in his hands and his arms, and his walking has become a lot slower in the progression than what it was even a couple months ago. I can notice that a lot. We just work day by day.
One day at a time.
One day at a time.
Now, you all were at the ALS walk that happened a couple of weeks ago. How important is that? And getting the word out, and also, you know, raising money for ALS. How important is that event?
I believe those kind of public awareness events are important, and that people can put a face with the disease. I believe that as long as I'm able, I will campaign, if you will, for ALS and the hopefully for a treatment to come forward. You hear about it, but it's not a big deal if you're not right there with it.
ALS is different in the aspect that it doesn't affect everybody in the same way. That's why I think it's so hard for them to recognize when somebody has ALS and to treat people with ALS, because of how different the effects on each person it is. There's, at the walk, there were a couple that said that it hit them really fast, and we are hoping that Jim's progression is very, very slow. But you don't know what that's going to be. So,
And that's the hard thing.
that's the hardest thing. Yeah.
Well, thank you both for being here and talking about ALS and letting people learn more about it. And I just want to wish you both all the best.
We thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take one more break, and we'll be back with a final word after this message.
A lot of us had trouble when we got back, adjusting to family life and our jobs.
Order up. When I want to give up, I try to focus on getting to the next minute, then the next hour, and the next day.
It might not seem like it right now, but there are people out there like me who want to listen and support you for the long haul.
And I found someone to talk to, someone who listened.
You are not alone.
We are back with Julia Prince and Whitney Taverna. And I want to ask you, what is it that you want people to know about ALS as far as the help and the hope that's out there?
So I think the thing that I want people to know is that this is probably one of the most difficult and devastating diagnoses that a person can receive, but the VA is here to support you. There's so many decisions, challenges, questions along the way, and me and my team are here to help.
Every day there's a challenge, a new challenge for individuals that are living with ALS and their caregivers. So we definitely encourage the support that we provide through our support groups. I think that is one thing that not everyone gets involved with because it kind of sounds a little scary to come to a group where you might see people that are more advanced than you. But the peer support that you find in those groups and the education that you're given in the groups are just tremendously helpful, I think. Most of our families walk away and they feel more empowered.
Again, we're all praying for a cure for everyone who has ALS. And Whitney and Julia, thank you so much for being here and talking about ALS. That is another edition of Veterans Health Today. Veterans, if you want information about enrolling at the Dayton VA, then call the Medical Center at 937-268-6511, extension 2035. Or you can call one of our 5 community-based outpatient clinics, or CBOCs, and you see the numbers there on your screen. Thank you so much for watching this program. Veterans, thank you for serving a grateful nation. We'll see you next time.